The Roblox asymmetrical horror genre has exploded in popularity over the past few years, with more and more asymmetrical horror games appearing across Roblox. It's safe to say the genre has firmly established itself as one of the platform's most recognizable genres. Now, of course, a lot of that popularity can be credited to Forsaken, but it wasn't the game that pioneered the genre or started its growth. That title, in my opinion, belongs to Pillar Chase 2. Pillar Chase 2 was the spark that ignited the modern Roblox asymmetrical horror scene, featuring a roster of killers inspired by various internet horror icons. It quickly became the blueprint that many future games will follow. However, as time went on, its gameplay began to show its stage. Modern asymmetrical games evolve by giving survivors unique abilities and more ways to fight back or outplay the killers. In contrast, Pillar Chase 2 survivors were originally left with almost no tools to defend themselves, making the gameplay feel increasingly outdated. The developers eventually tried to modernize the game by introducing survivor abilities. Unfortunately, the changes backfired, making the killer experience far less enjoyable. Instead of continuing to patch the old formula, they made the decision to start fresh. The original game was remembered as Legacy Pillar Chase, while its successor built from the ground up with a new direction, becoming Pillar Chase Recode. I have a soft spot for this game. Even though I don't play it nearly as much as Forsaken or Pursuit Core, I still find myself coming back every now and then because it offers a completely different take on the asymmetrical horror formula. Unlike most modern Roblox horror asyms, Pillar Chase Recode puts much more emphasis on the horror experience. The maps are darker, the atmosphere is far more oppressive, and surviving against the monster actually feels tense instead of just being a constant chase. At the same time, it still borrows a few ideas from modern asymmetrical games by giving survivors class-based abilities, allowing each class to fill a different role during a match. As of this video, the game features 7 unique monsters and 9 survivor classes, each with their own strengths, weaknesses, and playstyles. While I'd love to talk about every single one of them, that's not really what this video is about. Maybe I'll save that for another day. Instead, I want to look at the game as a whole, how it's changed from the original Pillar Chase, what Recode does better, where I think it still falls short, and how the community has shaped the game's identity over time. So, this video will be divided into 3 chapters: the good, the improvements, and the community. I'll be sharing what I think Pillar Chase Recode does exceptionally well, the areas where I believe it still has room to improve, and finally, my thoughts on the community surrounding the game. Just remember, these are all my personal opinions. None of this is meant to be taken as objective fact. If you disagree with any of my opinions, that's completely fine. Everyone has their own experiences and perspectives, and these are simply mine.
Does anybody want to watch me gamble?
Yes, we got money! Woo! Let's fucking go!
Let's start with what I think Pillar Chase Recode does really well. The first thing that immediately stands out is how much the game has improved its accessibility for new players. I actually made a video ranking Roblox asymmetrical games based on their new player experience, and back then, Pillar Chase was at the very bottom of my list. The new players were given almost nothing to work with. You spawned in with a flashlight, 0 abilities, and were expected to survive against experienced monsters that already knew every map and mechanic. Recode completely changed that. New players are given access to the Taxmaster class, which is honestly one of the smartest additions the developers could have made. The class helps guide you toward map objectives, gains a speed boost after completing them, heals you whenever you finish an objective, and even has the Danger Radar ability that highlights the number of monsters. Considering Pillar Chase maps are designed more like traditional horror games, with tight hallways, dark rooms, and plenty of places to get lost, having a beginner-friendly class like this makes learning the game far less frustrating. Another thing I don't see enough people talk about is the game's soundtrack, specifically the chase themes. Most Roblox asym games use fast-paced, energetic music to get your adrenaline pumping. Pillar Chase Recode goes in the opposite direction. Instead of sounding heroic or exciting, the chase themes feels unsettling. They create the impression that you're being hunted by something that genuinely wants to tear you apart. They're not flashy, they're not over the top, and they don't need to be. The music perfectly complements the game's atmosphere and reinforces its identity as an asymmetrical horror game that prioritizes horror first and competitive gameplay second. It's a small detail, but one I think deserves a lot more appreciation. Finally, I want to give credit to something that I wish more Roblox asymmetrical games would do, and that is public playtests. Pillar Chase Recode regularly hosts public testing sessions for coming monsters, maps, server classes, and gameplay changes. This allows the developers to collect real feedback before content officially release, making it much easier to identify balance issues, bugs, or mechanics that simply aren't fun. At the same time, it's also exciting for players. Instead of waiting months to see new content, the community gets a chance to experience it early, experiment with it, and even help shape final version through feedback. It's a win-win situation for both developers and the players, and I genuinely hope more asymmetrical games adopt this approach in the future. Now, yes, I've talked about the game's improvements in the last section, but the first section was about improvements the developers have already made. This section is about what I personally think still needs to be improved. None of these are deal breakers, but they're things I love to see addressed in the future updates. First, let's talk about the lighting. For some reason, whenever I play on lower graphic settings, certain rooms or parts of a map become ridiculously bright. I'm talking about slightly brighter, I mean bright enough to be distracting. Whenever I'm playing as a survivor or monster, it can sometimes make it difficult to see what's actually going on. I'm not entirely sure what causes it, but it has been an issue for me for quite a while. Now, I know this isn't a problem for everyone experiences. My laptop isn't exactly the strongest machine out there, so I have to play on lower graphics settings most of the time. Still, I'd really like to see developers optimize or fix lighting so the game looks more consistent regardless of your graphic settings. The next thing I want to talk about is the new player experience. Yes, the Taskmaster class is a fantastic addition and makes learning source much easier, but what I think the game still lacks is a proper tutorial. Right now, players are mostly expected to figure things out on their own. That isn't too bad if you're only interested in playing solo, but what about the monster side? Every monster has its different mechanics, different abilities, and different ways of playing. The game itself also works very differently compared to most popular Roblox asymmetrical horror games. Now, there is a button in the monster menu that you can use to use the monster for free, but it's hidden and isn't actually being told to you for the first time. A short tutorial that explains basic mechanics for both survivors and monster would go a long way in helping players understand what they're supposed to do. Joma is a good example of this. Their tutorial does a great job introducing players to the game's mechanics without overwhelming them, and I think Pillar Chase Recode could really benefit from something familiar. Finally, let's talk about the coin system. Right now, you can earn a maximum of 70 coins per match, whether you're playing as a survivor or a monster. Now, I completely understand why developers do this. They want players to have something to grind for, and that's perfectly reasonable. But personally, I think the cap is just a little too low. With some of the most expensive cosmetics costing around 1,850 to 2,000 coins, reaching that amount can take quite a long time, especially if you're constantly hitting the 70 coin cap. I'm not asking for a massive increase. Even bumping the cap up around to 85 coins per match would make the grind feel a little more rewarding without completely destroying the game's progression system. Again, these aren't huge issues that ruin the game for me. They're simply improvements that I think would make an already enjoyable experience even better. Okay, now we get to the final section of this video, and probably the one that's going to get me into the most trouble. The community. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think the Pillar Chase community is a bad or toxic community. In fact, compared to some other Roblox ASIM communities, I actually think it's the most chill one. If I had to describe the difference between the Pillar Chase and the Forsaken communities, I'd say the Pillar Chase community is more like a small, friendly village where everyone knows each other and constantly jokes around, while the Forsaken community is California. I'll let you interpret that however you want. But seriously, I've been around the Roblox ASIM horror community for quite a while now, and I've seen people interact in all sorts of ways, whether it's joking around, bantering, friendly rivalries, arguing over game balance, or just talking about their favorite games. However, there was one particular video that managed to shake that peaceful little village called Pillar Chase. You probably already know what I'm talking about. Corso's ASIM game ranking video. The video itself wasn't anything malicious. Corso spent a couple of hours playing different asymmetrical games as a beginner and ranked them based on how enjoyable and accessible they were from a new player's perspective. And remember when I talked about how Pillar Chase Recode has significantly improved its new player experience? Well, there is an important detail here. Corso's video was made before those improvements were implemented. So, when he played Pillar Chase Recode, he was experiencing the game during a time when the new player experience was, in my opinion, at its worst. And because of that, he ended up putting Pillar Chase Recode in F tier. Personally, as someone who played the game before those quality of life changes were introduced, I actually think that ranking was understandable. Was I surprised? Absolutely. But was it too harsh for putting Pillar Chase 2 in F tier? Yes. Now, the problem was that a large portion of the Pillar Chase community did not take the ranking very well.
He was whipping up anger in a kettle, festering hatred like steam out the ears, manifesting rage in a kettle.
There was a lot of backlash toward Corso, with people criticizing and even slandering his opinion to the point where his video was jokingly, or sometimes not so jokingly, referred to as Popo 2.0 by parts of the Pillar Chase community. And this is where I think the community became a little too defensive. Because at the end of the day, it's just one person's opinion. Corso wasn't making some massive expose about Pillar Chase. He wasn't trying to slander developers or tell everyone that the game was objectively terrible. He was simply playing the game as a new player and explaining why he didn't enjoy his experience. And honestly, considering when the video was made, I think his criticism was valid. Before new player quality of life updates, getting into Pillar Chase could be pretty rough. You were thrown to a game with very little explanation, limited tools, unfamiliar maps, and mechanics that weren't even necessarily intuitive to someone coming from other popular asymmetrical horror games. So, if someone plays the game for the first time, has a bad experience, and then gives it a low ranking, that's their experience. You don't have to agree with it. You can explain why you think they're wrong. You can even recommend that they give the game another chance. But there's a big difference between defending your favorite game and becoming overly defensive when there's someone who criticizes it properly. And I think that's something the Pillar Chase community could improve on. Because overall, I genuinely don't think this is a bad community. There are plenty of great people within it who make the game more enjoyable to be part of. The jokes, the memes, the banter, and the general interaction between players are honestly one of the reasons I still enjoy coming back to the community. But sometimes there's this tendency to immediately jump to the game's defense whenever someone has something to say about it. And criticism isn't necessarily an attack. Sometimes it's just criticism. If anything, having people point out the game's flaws can help the developers understand what needs to be improved. And Pillar Chase Recode itself is a perfect example of that. So, if there's one thing I want the Pillar Chase community to take away from this section, it's this. You don't have to defend your favorite game from every negative opinion. Sometimes, you can just let someone dislike the game, and that's okay.
Wait! Don't turn on the light!
And with that, we've reached the end of the video. So, after I've talked about it, what do I actually think about Pillar Chase Recode? It's a great game, and honestly, I still really like this game even after the massive roster purge it got. It's definitely not the perfect, and there are quite a few things I think developers could improve. The lagging issues on lower graphics settings can be annoying. The game could really benefit from an actual tutorial, and I think the coin game could be a little more generous. But at the same time, Recode has done a lot of things right. The improved new player experience, the horror classes, the horror-focused atmosphere, the soundtrack, and the developers' willingness to publicly test new content all make this game stand out from a lot of other Roblox asym horror games. And I think that's what makes Pillar Chase Recode so interesting. It doesn't try to completely copy what other popular asym games are doing. Instead, it takes some of the modern mechanics that players have come to expect, like several abilities and different character roles, and mixes them with the horror-focused identity that made Pillar Chase special in the first place. And as for the community, well, I think there's definitely room for improvement there too. But despite the occasional overreacting to criticism, I still think the community is generally a fun place to be in. And there are plenty of genuinely great people who make it enjoyable. So, that is my overall thoughts on the Pillar Chase Recode. If you've played the game, I want to hear what you think about it. Do you agree with my points? Are there things you think I missed? And most importantly, do you think Pillar Chase Recode is heading in the right direction? Let me know in the comments. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. And who knows, maybe the Pillar Chase community will see this video and brand me as Popo 3.0. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye!